This is the rate of monetary expansion, and this is different than what we typically think of inflation.
Really nice.
Nice to meet you.
Hey, man.
A very quick question, because you're a podcaster.
Yeah, sure.
What was the motivation to do a podcast, especially on Bitcoin, all this crypto world?
Well, first of all, I love Bitcoin, so I wanted to spread the word about Bitcoin. And part of it was scratching my own itch, right? I just felt like there weren't that many kind of high quality podcasts at the time when I started my podcast. It sort of, to me, it felt a bit like the blind leading the blind out there, right? Other than a few good guys like, Noted Podcast, Tales from the Crypt, some of those guys. So for me, it was like, you know what? I'm going to do it how I would have wanted it, right? And so I started this on the side. I was doing my normal day job and just stacking sats, basically. And then I just got to a point now where recently I've quit that day job and I'm now podcasting full time. And so for me, it's just been about how can I kind of educate in a way that kind of brings a very particular perspective, which is what I call the Bitcoin Austrian view, which is, guys like Safety, Jimmy Song, Michael Goldstein, Pierre Richard, those kinds of guys, who I'm sort of bringing a view similar to them, because I think you can't understand Bitcoin without really properly understanding the Austrian economics part of it behind that. You can, but it's just more like it helps you dramatically in knowing that Austrian economics part of it, because without understanding where we've come from and why we ended up in this situation, it's hard to understand why Bitcoin is part of the answer to that problem.
Yes, that's nice. What would you say was the hottest topic in 2019 that you broadcasted?
Oh, so far in 2019, there's so much. There's Bitcoin privacy, there's Lightning Network, there's Liquid.
Yep.
A lot of these questions are sort of quickly resolving. Obviously, the Lightning Network is growing up a lot as well. It's still very early days though, because it's not, like I would say right now, it's very much like enthusiast sort of thing, right? And it's still not that kind of arm's length. It's like, oh, hey, you want a channel? Okay, you're my friend, I'll just open a channel with you kind of thing. But in the future, it might be more like, hey, I need to make sure it's going to be worth my while. Like, are people going to route through me to you? Why would I open the channel with you, right? I think some of these other questions that, things have grown so fast, so much faster than we could have ever imagined, right? Like Donald Trump tweeting about Bitcoin and, Bitcoin getting mentioned in like the highest levels of the US government. So it's starting to become a little bit more relevant. I don't think it's quite to that point where governments like really care yet, because it's not like that, that dramatically impacting their tax base and so on. But we'll probably get to that point eventually, 5-10 years, who knows? But definitely where we are, I don't think anyone 10 years ago would have thought that we would be where we are now.
That's true, and especially you talked about the government, you talked about the Bitcoin as a people's money, but there's also Libra, like Facebook, yes?
Yeah.
And they are launching their corporate money, so
yeah.
It seems like it's three parties which will try to somehow meet and decide whether either the control will be or they will distribute the biggest control.
Right,
yeah,
that's a great point as well, because I think if you think back to Hayek and his idea, the denationalization
yes.
of money, it actually, from that perspective, might have made sense of having lots of different corporate controlled monies, right? But the challenge that we see today is that anyone who tries it, they get co-opted by the government, right? So PayPal was tried. They were initially wanted to do something like this, but then they got co-opted. EGOD got shut down. Liberty Reserve got shut down. Like, it just, these things have been tried, and unfortunately, and as we're seeing, especially with the EU and France, I think particularly, who were saying, we don't want Libra, right? No.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, they won't be able to so easily do that with Bitcoin. Now, will it be outlawed in certain countries? Who knows? It may come. But I think for now, it's unlikely. And I think it's also a good argument that we as Bitcoiners can make is that, look, ultimately, if you just ban it in this country, it's just going to shunt it elsewhere. And you don't want to put yourself behind the rest of the world in adoption of this new superior money.
Yes. Last question for you. If you're just starting, you just heard about Bitcoin recently, for example, what would be your piece of advice? Where to start from?
Okay. Well, a few things actually. So Jimmy Song's book, the Little Bitcoin book, Jimmy Song and 7 other authors, Alex Gladstein and a whole bunch of other guys. I think that's a great resource. Obviously, my podcast, that's a good resource. But I think ultimately, there's a lot of, you have to just find what works for you. And I think ultimately a lot of it is more experienced Bitcoiners have to sort of take that on and sort of guide their newbie friend. And I think this is something I'm thinking about as well, because I've had that experience before where I might have accidentally overwhelmed a newbie, and then they see, oh, there's just too much, I'm not even going to get started, I'm not even going to try. Whereas really what I think is a good thing is pick one book or his one episode or one video or one article, here you go, read it, and then once you've done, come back to me and ask me questions, you know, and then sort of, it's like a pay it forward system, right? Because even for all of us, someone took the time to teach you and me about Bitcoin, and they took the time either to write an article or do a podcast or do a YouTube, something, and so it's on you to pay it forward for the next person. So I think that's sort of the message or the takeaway, I would say.
Yeah. The final one, yes or no? Should I invest in Bitcoin?
Oh, yes, of course.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me.